Hello, Guru Fateh. Welcome to the Sikhcast. My name is Manpreet Singh. Thank you for being with us. Today, I have with me Harinder Singh. Harinder, Guru Fateh, what's going on?
Guru Fateh.
So, Happy New Year. Happy Sikh New Year. Today's March 14th, and I'm glad I have you on to talk about it because honestly, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a Sikh New Year every year. So I'm glad to have you on. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what is Sikh New Year. I know you have an article that was published today on the Sikhri website called Nanakshahi Calendar and Era of Nanak the Sovereign. So let's talk about that. Tell me more about Nanakshahi. Tell me more about the Sikh New Year. I'm sure a lot of Sikhs want to know what's going on.
Yeah, that sounds good. We can actually greet it to be a happy new year once we understand what we are celebrating, right? Otherwise, it just becomes another customary ritual. Nanakshahi is the word. And the word actually has been in existence from the time of since Sikhs and non-Sikhs who started to celebrate the advent of Guru Nanak Sahib on this earth. So from that time onwards, we started naming things in the name of the Guru. Whether it was the coin, whether it was the era, as we're going to talk about it, or whether it is even the bricks. So everything we do was in the name of the Guru. And Nanak Shah and Nanak Shahi, which comes from it, is about that. So Shah word is a Farsi word, a Persian word, which literally means a king. So it is an honorific title which people have been using in Iran and other places as well for either a prince or a king or an emperor or a lord, things of that nature. Interpretively, it means the ruler. In Sikh vocabulary, because we say Padshah, we use the word sovereign, just like the word Mahalla when it comes in Gurbani. It means sovereign. And so Nanak Shah, Nanak the ruler, Nanak the sovereign. And E at the end makes it something which belongs to that, right? So Nanak Shahi is the era of Guru Nanak, the sovereign. So Nanak Shahi can also be the year, the calendar, the brick, or whatever belongs to in the name of Guru Nanak Sahib. So when we say the year in the context of the year of Nanak Shah, when it makes it, for example, right now it's 553. Today is the starting of 553 Nanak Shahi. It means calendar which started with the advent of Guru Nanak Sahib, who is the sovereign who rules our heart, and we name this era, we name this calendar in the name of Guru Nanak.
I didn't really, the word Nanakshahi, I think I first heard it when I wanted something. Actually it just came to me right now. I was like, hey, I want to read a great Sikh history book. Can you name one? And you're like, yeah, here it is, Percussions of History. And I'm like, where do I send the money? And you're like, nanakshahi.org or Nanakshahi somewhere. And I'm like, Nanakshahi, okay. That's the first time I heard of it. And I hear it here and there. I know we, Sikhri celebrated Nanakshahi 550 in a big way. But where did this word start in basically the Sikh language and the Punjabi culture? And when was it popularized? And when did it go away? Because when I talk to our family members or when I talk to other Sikhs, Nanakshahi is really not in their vocabulary. So when did this come about?
That's a great point, and it's a great question as well. So look, I'll start with your reference when I mentioned that to you, that Percussions of History book was published by the Nanakshahi Trust, which Devinder Pal and I, a good friend of mine, we started that. That was the first NGO we registered in Punjab when we started working together. And it was a predecessor to Punjab Digital Library now, which most people know. And we did it because we wanted to do in the name of Guru Nanak Sahib as well. So even the trust we said is going to be in the name of or in the era of Guru Nanak. And that's the idea. But the word has been around. When we look at, I think the most common word which most people have probably heard of, when Baba Banda Singh Bahadur established the Khalsa Raj in May 1710, he issued a coin. And that coin was called Nanakshahi Sikka. Sikka literally means coin. And that coin was released in the name of Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh, in the name that Khalsa is establishing this to in the city of peace. So that's probably the most famous articulation in 1710 when the coin was released, which called it the Nanakshahi Sikka. But what people might not know is, and again, this is in the collections of Punjab Digital Library, that there was a coin where the Nanakshahi Sammat was written. And Sammat word just you can say means year. So when the Pangi Missal, which was part of the Sikh Commonwealth, the Missal period, in 1786, from the Amritsar Mint, released a silver coin of about 14 grams. And that one, it says 316 Nanakshahi Samvat, 316, which roughly becomes 1786 in the Common Era, which is what we are used to. So it is very important that in the 18th century, when two times there was establishment of Sikh sovereignty in the political realm by the Sikhs in the post-Guru period as well, both of them, first one named it the Nanakshahi Sikha, and the second one in the pre-Ranjit Singh period, then it happened multiple times. They actually called it, they actually dated the Nanakshahi year in there. Within here, I'll mention one more thing. In the writings, we discovered this for the first time when Gyani Gyan Singh wrote Twarikh Guru Khalsa. This is very important because Gyani Gyan Singh was hired as a teenager by Maharaja Ranjit Singh to read Sukhmani Sahib to him. So think about that for a second. That person is a Granthi who goes on to become a revenue collector in the Patiala state and the Jind state. And when 1849 annexation of Punjab happened, he actually said, I don't want to do any of this. He became a pilgrim. And he traveled from 1849 to 1857. He finally said, now it is time to write down our version, a Sikh version of the Sikh history. So when he writes Twarikh Guru Khalsa, where he starts from Guru Nanak all the way till the Ranjit Singh period, because that's his time when he's writing. So when he writes that book, in there, he starts to use the word Nanakshahi Sammat when he talks about Guru Ramdas Pasha's Prakash Purab, the day Guru Ramdas Pasha is born in Chuna Mandi. So he says, this is the year of the Vikrami, which was a Vikrami Sammat, Vikrami calendar year, which India still uses, parts of Indians still use, parts of Sikhs also still use, Hindus use, many calendars of India use that. And then it mentions Ishvi, which is the common era, the regular calendar we use. And next to it says Nanakshahi Sammat as well. So these are the three things in writings which are available or in naming which became popular during 18th century and late 19th century when the first history part was being written.
Well, I hope after this podcast that it becomes more popular now. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of the history of calendars. I know you know this, and if anyone wants to read about it, they could go on the Sikri website. But talk about the Gregorian calendar, because I think this is the confusion, especially for people like me living in America. The Gregorian calendar and the Nanakshahi calendar, what's the difference? And then we'll get into how different dates are celebrated by different Sikhs.
So I think before we get into that, it's important to also understand, let's talk about the Gregorian, for example. What is Gregorian calendar? Today, the calendar which the world is using for, let's say, almost all of the world is using the calendar. Like today we said March 14th, 2021. In Nanakshahi year, that becomes 1 Chet, 553. But we are referencing March 14th, 2021, because that's what we are used to. So this is the global calendar now, whether you use Google calendars for yourself or whether you physically are still using calendars, these are the dates everyone is referencing. And not just Sikhs, the Hijris, the Islamic calendar, the Persian calendars, the Chinese calendars, the different Sammats or including the Vikrami calendars of India, they all use this reference. So let's talk from that perspective, not just from an Indian perspective, which we'll get into a little later. So the global perspective is, look, this Gregorian calendar is called Gregorian calendar because its current form was corrected and revised under Pope Gregory. Yeah. So what had happened was, it's actually not a Gregorian calendar. It's a misnomer. Some people call it, when they write CE, it actually refers to Common Era now. It's not a Christian calendar. What it is it was, during Roman Empire, Julius Caesar, under him, they created the scientists, the mathematicians, the astrologers, the astronomers, and including, quote unquote, the priestly class. They all actually worked on it and they created a calendar because we all need units of time to figure out, some referencing. And most units of time are based on either the sun or the moon and their movements thereof. So basically, that was called Julian calendar. And Julian calendar does not start with the advent of Jesus, of Nazareth, popularly Jesus Christ for those who call him a savior. It actually starts with Julius Caesar's era. So it is not a Christian calendar, but the church adopted that because it was a larger referencing even for their world during the Roman Empire as well. So when they adopted it, they faced similar things, like what we are facing, which they do celebrate the Gurpurab because the referencing was different. And they had an issue 400 years or so ago where Easter fell apart 13 days. It was a difference of 13 days. So they got the corrections done. And after that correction, it was called the Gregorian calendar. And that's the basis of our global calendar now. So it actually started out as a very secular calendar. The history of calendars is political empires decided the calendars. And then sometimes religion started the empires, but actually it was religions working with the political entities of the time who came up with the new calendars. So I want us to understand that this is not really about only the church or only the politics. They've always been together. They figure out how to mix into each other in order to create a popularity or in order to create a dominance. Same thing has happened with calendars. This is why there are different calendars in the world. And in that line of calendars, which started from a Babylonian period, the Hebrew calendars are based on that. Israel still uses two calendars, for example, one for quote unquote what they call secular activities and one for religious purposes, religious activities. Many cultures do that. So this is the history of calendar. In that history, we have different civilizations basically based on their political empires or based on their religiosities have worked with different calendars. And what we currently use is more or less what they call a common era calendar now. And that becomes the reference. Now add to it from a Sikh angle, because in India, look, India has several calendars too, by the way. We are just used to Vikrami. The official Indian government calendar is not even a Vikrami calendar. They came up with another version. They call it a Saka calendar. In 1943, they adopted it for All India Radio, for example, and Indian Gazette and things of that nature. So they're all eras of particular empires. Back to that, right? So depending on how you're calculating based on sun's movement or moon's movement, and some of them combine the two for particular purpose, different calendars get made. And the most common one in India is called Vikrami or Vikrami. It's the same thing. Babba and Vabba are interchangeable in Punjabi. Same thing as Sammat or Samvat. The word means year. It's the same thing. So Vikrami is the basis for when most of the Sikh history is written, because that was the dominant calendar in use. It's not that one is better or worse. They're different referencing.
That's good to know. And I think another thing that is good to know is in the Nanakshahi calendar, it might be in people's in their back of their brain somewhere, but I think it needs to be said. Where are we getting the names of these months from? So tell people that, because I don't think a lot of people know that they're actually in Gurbani.
Yeah, so then why the Nanakshahi calendar? Well, if you believe that the era of Guru Nanak matters and we want to leave that just like our predecessors did, there was a complete clarity in Guru period. There was complete clarity in Banda Singh Bahadur's mind. There was a complete clarity in the Misl period. There was a complete clarity in Ranjit Singh period. There was complete clarity when the history of the Sikhs is being written, including by Gyani Gyan Singh. So it's not that we didn't have this. Somewhere in last 150 years, we lost it. And the reasons are primarily have to do with when you lose your sovereignty, many things change. So our calendars got subdued. Nobody talked about them. Our cultures, our gurdwaras, our rahats, the way we teach, the way we sing, the whole culture changed. So the Nanakshahi word got revised because of the 550 years of Guru Nanak. Let's also give credit to that. That only happened a couple of years ago. I think it became a global phenomenon again when we said Nanakshahi 550 or N550 everywhere. So the word got revived. The calendar part needs to be revived as well. And what we do know for sure in calendar is if you believe that Guru Nanak is the ruler and Guru Nanak Raj Chalaya, as Gurbani says, then we must talk about this calendar as well. We must work with it. And in working with it, you basically have to come up with what does your year look like, some referencing. And there you have options. You can base it on what we now call the common era calendar. You can base it on other Vikrami calendars. Whatever you want to base it on, then you have options. Do you want to base it on sun's movement, moon's movement, or what they call lunisolar, which means some combination thereof? That part we leave it to mathematicians and scientists to figure out, because technically it has some calculation differences, But no calendar, absolutely no calendar, including the common era calendar, is perfect. They all have errors which have to be adjusted every few years. The question is, do you adjust them every year or do you adjust them 73 years? That's the debate in that world right now. That said, we know the names of the month. The names of the month in Guru Granth Sahib, there are two Baramas which actually tell us that the Sikh New Year for Guru Nanak Sahib and for Guru Arjan Sahib starts with Chet. We also have two Banis called Var Sat. Var is day and Sat is 7. 7 days a week. In there, we know it starts with Aditwar, which contemporary Punjabi calls Atwar. And it ends with Shanichharwar, which contemporary Punjabi says Shanichharwar. So we do know the names of the days. We know the names of the months. We have the numerals which have been presented. We have the alphabets which have been presented in Guru Granth Sahib as well. So all of that is available. Then it's a question of just figuring out the math to whether you want to have the fixed historical dates for every year for referencing, or do you want to have a moving dates for particular celebrations of Gurpurab or historical events. But the first part is very, very clear that Punjabi New Year absolutely is starting with what they call Vaisakh, harvesting festivals. And perhaps that's the confusion, because what we lost from 1870s till now, about all 150 plus years, is our sovereignties of different kind, from spiritual to political. So a lot of it becomes cultural. In our cultural, most of us, including me, grew up with Punjabi festival is the Sikh festival. So Punjab and Sikh relationship is very intertwined. They're inseparable, but there are things where Sikhs do in their own way, because we believe Guru Nanak to be our ultimate authority for everything. In Punjabis, Guru Nanak is one of the authorities. It might not be the ultimate authority. So for those who believe Guru Nanak is the ruler, the sovereign, the Padsha, the Mahalla, for them, Nanakshahi year matters most, and we want to celebrate with those months, we want to celebrate with those days, and that's the idea behind the Nanakshahi calendar and the year.
So let's talk about dates, because I think and we don't want to get too much into it because it could be controversial, but I do want to mention that, and I want to get your 2 cents on, we celebrate this Gurpurab, this date. 20 days later, I see the same Gurpurab being celebrated. So how do we fix this confusion? First of all, where did it come from? Is it because of all these different calendars everywhere, plus the cultural element? And what are we going to go about? Like, what do we do to go fix it? How do we get all 6 on the same page? Will they ever be on the same page?
So I think that's a great question. And there is nothing wrong with having controversial discussion. In fact, that's where the healthy tensions need to be brought up. And what I want everyone to understand before we get into this is what I have talked about so far, which is calendar is a reference. And according to Gurbani, and this is something we need to really understand, the world religions and cultures have days and months and times which they consider to be bad, quote unquote. They consider to be bad omen or not as religious, or they believe those times are cursed. These are the words globally many religions and belief systems believe, even today. That's why they do certain things on certain months and certain days. And some of that has crept into Sikhi. So what I want to mention is, in Sikh calendar, in Sikh paradigm born out of Ik Oankar, there is no such thing. So firstly, we have no moment which is unauspicious. We have no moment which is more pure than the other. No month, no day, none of that. Like I grew up with people saying, oh, on Saturdays you don't wash hair. Because that's not a Sikh thing. That's a particular mindset with particular ritualism, because Sunny Devta might get upset, that kind of stuff in Indologies. So what I want to stress, based on Guru Granth Sahib, only that moment, and these are the moments of time, by the way, when you heard the word Muhurat or Murat, it's a moment of time. The word Kadi is a moment of time. So it starts with Pal to Muhurats, to Kadis, to the Pahars. These are more, measurements of time in Indian calendars. And what Guru Granth Sahib is saying very clearly throughout multiple shabads, that only that moment is great when I am connected with you. There is no other moment because of its location or referencing that it is bad. So a lot of Punjabis and Indians don't get married in a certain months. Sikhs don't have an issue with it. Certain people don't get married if the certain time passes. We don't have issues with it, although some do. I'm talking from a Sikhi angle. Culturally, many people have many issues because they have not understood this. So given that we don't have issue with any reference, it actually makes no difference as to when we commemorate what. Really, it's a utilitarian question, an historicity question. It's a question of whether we want to maintain one common era in reference to Nanakshahi or one Bikrami in reference to Nanakshahi. And that's really where the debate is. That's why, and by the way, world deals with this. You know, the Muslim community deals with it. That's why you will see Ramadan or Ramzan, depending on where you are in the world. Sometimes it comes in summer, sometimes comes in winter. This is why in the Sikh world, you will see it in the same common era calendar. You might have Guru Gobind Pasha's Gurpurb twice and one time none. This is why you have moving dates, because they're working with a different referencing system. It has nothing to do with auspiciousness of the time or omenness of the time. It has everything to do with in which referencing are you trying to locate the historicity so we can create these commemorations. So let me pause there because that was the back end of it and see if this works, and then we can go to the next part of it.
So the next part, I want to talk about significant dates. I'm glad that you mentioned not washing hair because everyone grows up with those things. But let's get into some dates and which are significant, because you do mention some historical dates in the article. So I want to get to those. But also, is it more for us that Sikhs need to remember why you're celebrating and what you're celebrating? Because just like I'm sure a lot of Christians know, but a lot of people know now, especially in this world of Google and information is at your fingertips, like Jesus was not born December 25th, but at least they celebrate his birth and they commemorate him on December 25th. They have a date. So is it more for us to don't get bogged down if it was the 13th, 14th, or 15th? It's more about what are you doing and what are you celebrating?
Absolutely. And I think this is something we need to realize. There's always going to be a debate. And the question is, don't get worked up about this debate. Like this Nanakshahi calendar debate has only occurred among Sikhs in last 20 years more. The work started on specificity of the calendar, not the naming of the calendar, not that we need the calendar, but how do we create a better referencing. The work has only happened in the last 30 years. And, two of the individuals, actually, Mr. Purewal, who drafted this, Pal Singh Purewal, and then also people who were critiqued that, Anurag Singh, for example, from Ludhiana is the one who's critiqued it. And then Pal Singh Purewal is Edmonton based, who drafted it. I've talked with both. There is a complete agreement that Sikhs should have their own calendar. The question really is on what referencing to use. So what I want to say is, look, even Jesus wasn't even born 2000 years ago. That's a Julian calendar. The church accepted that this is how, when they want to celebrate, for whatever reasons, they came up with their own reasons, right? It took them 200 to 400 year difference in that many a time. So other things is, so similarly, we are going through that kind of a pain. This is a very small pain. It just requires agreeing upon certain parameters. There is a vast agreement. There is a complete agreement on why we need it. There's a complete agreement on the naming of not just the year, months, as well as the days. There is a referencing disagreement as to how to deal with it. Okay, that said, let's answer your question. So yes, so for example, today is 1 Chet, in 553, which becomes 14th March 2021. If we go by what I was saying, technically the lunisolar calendar in reference to the common era, you also have two other historical days today. So Guru Har Rai Padshah's Gurgaddi Divas is also today. And this is also the Hola Mahalla Day. So if you go by the Gregorian referencing of that, or what I'm saying common era referencing, that's the date. But if you stick to the Bikrami Samvat, which is a different referencing, historical referencing what Sikhs have been using, then Hola Mahalla will be, actually I'm trying to recall the date, it will show up on 29th March because it's on 16 Chet. And Gurgaddi Devas for the 7th Parsha will show up on 29th April, which is 27 Chet. So that's the difference. The months and the dates of the Gurpurab, they get shifted because of the referencing. If we want fixed dates, then we need to work with more common era systems. If we want to have multiplicity of the dates, then they will be shifting every year as well.
So the fixed dates, just so I want to leave people too with some fixed dates. So every year, March 14th is the new year. It's one Chet. That will never change. March 14th will stay. Are there any other Sikh dates in mind that will always stay, or will this be, others will be shifted?
Everything will be shifting. I think the confusion might be coming because there was a Nanakshahi calendar which was presented, accepted by SGPC, adopted by SGPCs furthered, then it got revised, then it got changed, and then they kept the name Nanakshahi, but they changed it to back to the Vikrami angles. And those are what I call games between, just like church had its games, our own conglomerate of Akalis and SGPCs and DSGMCs and the Jathedars and the Akal Takhts and the Sant Samaj, they also have their own games. And we know this. This is not peculiar to only calendar. It actually affects the larger, even the definition of a Sikh, including many things we are dealing with, from Sarbat Khalsas to how to even have authentic version of Guru Granth Sahib. So this is part of that game, it's a smaller game. And I want to not touch upon that because you and I can't change this game. What we can change is that Nanakshahi, there's a complete agreement on. At least let's start saying, so one Chet will never change. Manpreet, that's what I'm trying to say. One Chet, what it becomes, I think there's a larger agreement, let's keep that to March 14th. But everything else, depending on how you're referencing, will change. So in the original draft, they had agreed that because of the larger traditional sort of celebrations, they had agreed, let's not fix the dates of Guru Nanak Pasha's Prakash Purab and Hola Mahalla and Diwali, for example, right? And although even SGPC's own site, even if you go there today, I actually did that a few moments ago, and I went on their site and it very clearly says April 15th is Guru Nanak Pasha's Prakash Purab. But we have been celebrating it on Kaptak Di Puranmashi, which puts it somewhere in November timeframe. Again, this is not about when to celebrate. This debate is not new. Even 100 years ago, there was a book written, Kaptak Ke Vaisakh, by historian Karam Singh. So these debates will continue. What I want you and I and people who are interested in learning about this is that it's purely a referencing issue. So world works with different referencing. What referencing does the larger Sikh Panth wants to work with? That should be left to certain ideologues and subject matter experts to figure it out. Once they are free of the influences of Punjab influence, Sikh political influence, Brahmanical influence, they'll figure it out, right? That work is not hard. That math and that science is not hard at all. What is harder is how do you remain sort of complex free. Once we become complex free, we will be able to fix that. In the absence of that, all of us at least should start commemorating Nanakshahi. We must know that one Chet, March 14th, is a Nanakshahi New Year. No, there's no disagreement there. So let's do that. Let's remind people what Nanakshahi is. Have a conversation in your homes, in your organizations. Make it a day off. Make it about reflecting on why is Guru Nanak Sahib the sovereign? Because we don't reflect on that. We keep reducing Guru Nanak Sahib to be a spiritualist. All of our contemporary evidence from the Guru period, all the way till 18th century, 19th, 20th, 21st century, actually presents him as being a sovereign. Sikh vocabulary has always called him Patsha. And our coins show that. Our calendar shows that. Nanakshahi actually means this. But why are we taking that out? Which is why we are in this kind of a debate we are caught up in. But the way to come out of it is start commemorating it. Start taking a day off if you can. Start using it for the reflections on the rule of Guru Nanak, the Raj of Guru Nanak Sahib, and how to make that Raj, that year, that remembrance, that Simran and the Naam culture of Guru Nanak to make our localities better egalitarian societies. That's what Nanakshahi is about.
So Harinder, I think you kind of said it, but I'll give it back to you in 1 second. Appreciate you writing this, appreciate you talking about it, because as much as I know in my circle, a lot of people don't know this. So if any Sikhs out there born on March 14th, you will always remember this date. It is Happy New Year. So last year, and we're kind of dealing with this still, but I think hopefully it's on the decline. COVID took over the year. The whole year was kind of crazy and topsy-turvy. So now we have a whole new year beginning. And in America, at least, it's very popular to have New Year resolutions. So give me your take on the New Year is beginning for Sikhs. There's so much going on in the world. Farmers' protest is happening. Let's not forget that either. How do you feel about the year? Talk about resolutions and close it up for us.
Sure. I think this is where I want to bring it back to Guru Granth Sahib, the Bani, the Shabad. That's where the wisdom is, right? So when Guru Sahibs and Pagats and the Pats are writing about these things, what do they call, they use the word Pala. That what is the Pala time, the pleasant or the beautiful time? What is the Paleri Ruth? These are the words of Guru Granth Sahib, right? So, and they say that day, soi dinas sohavda, or even in the nice season, we all like springs. It says, well, jit din visare par brahm, fit paleri ruth. Even the pleasant season becomes, cursed, if I'm being harsh, but it's saying, jive Punjabi ch kehna fitte muh. It's that. So, it's not worth even staying in a pleasant physical season if the day is passed in forgetfulness. So the resolution for Sikhs is only one: to remain connected. To remain connected at all moments and all time, in any fortnight, at any moment, at any day. That's the resolution for us. And the way to do that, and this is where perhaps the hope comes in, and the ask is, like the effort part which we are supposed to be making, is basically, if you want to make Be Das Maha, Be Das is Be is 2 and Das is 10. So 12 Maha, the 12 months, that's the line. Be Das Maha Rutti Thitti Var Pale, Kadi Murat Pal Sache Aaye Sahaj Mile. He says the way you know that all your 12 months are going to be great and pleasant, all seasons will be present. Even if you work by the lunar calendar, and this is why Gurbani says Thitti is a lunar day. Eventually when they get combined, they're called Masya, Sangran, Puran, Masi. They're based on that. He says if you use the lunar day system, even that, if you use a daily or weekly, when you say 52 weeks, all of them are pleasant. But how will you make them pleasant? That's the question. He says the way you will make all of them pleasant for you, including the whole year then, because a collection of all these is a year, is when you, every moment, when you bring Sache Sahaj Mile, when the eternal is meeting you, you are one with the eternal. You feel the presence of the eternal, the Eko Ankar. And you feel that not because you're making effort now, but it has happened Sahaje. It has happened habitually, naturally, effortlessly. It is a state of existence. That's what Sahaj is. So the resolution is to make every moment a pleasant moment. And the way you know you have made it pleasant is that now it doesn't take effort. It is happening naturally.
And they're great words to live by and great words to start the new year. I appreciate your time, man. Thanks for letting us know, and thanks for letting all the Sikhs know about this date. And hopefully we will start saying Happy New Year to each other every March 14th. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming on the podcast. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Guru Fateh.